At Stonehenge it's always been about the sun. For more than 4,000 years the monument has stood like a giant sundial, marking the longest day of the year and the shortest, taking aim at the sun like a giant stone gun sight. Yet Stonehenge is also about mystery. The big stone circle is only the most obvious part of the site. Lesser monuments, some much older and most of them buried under the soil, now stretch for miles across the landscape people are willing to put into constructing monuments, and they are being looked at in a way that's never been possible before, using high-definition ground-penetrating radar and other magnetic and resistance-sensitive survey equipment in what's being called the Hidden Landscapes Project. A documentary team from the Smithsonian Channel has been following the archaeologists around, and using computer-generated imagery it's been digitally reconstructing some of the monuments that have long since disappeared. Like this burial chamber built of wooden posts with timbered walls and covered with earth. It predates Stonehenge by centuries, and would have held the remains of around 50 bodies. Henry Chapman, an archaeologist from the University of Birmingham, England, says the project has produced more data than they know what to do with. It's a sweet shop problem that when you're presented with loads of more information, and the new data has helped answer some old questions like whether the giant stone circle, now somewhat gap-toothed, was ever complete. The digital probing and some dry patches that emerged during a recent drought seem to show that Stonehenge was once in fact a full circle, and we got a series of parch marks which showed us the positions of some stones which we'd never seen before at Stonehenge. The position of stones 17 here. Mark Bowden of English Heritage shows us how it looked. Stone 18 here, stone 19 here, and stone 20 here. In many ways, I think we've had almost a false understanding as of Stonehenge, and because we haven't been able to see the whole picture, what kind of false understanding would and how much of an understanding have we had? I think probably one of the most stunning ones is for the largest monument, the landscape, and quite hard to see, but the Greater Cursus, which is running right across here. A huge 21 miles literally goes right from both horizons. The new imagery shows what they call the Greater Cursus running like a huge ditch and mound in a massive loop across the countryside. Archaeologists have known it was there but were never sure what it contained or what it was for, and the new gizmos have revealed details never previously seen. In the hundreds of years Stonehenge has been studied, there were great pits and structures along its route, and all of them seemed built in relation to the passage of the sun across the sky. In fact, the ends of the curses themselves line up with the main monument and the sun at the winter and summer solstice. These were extremely primitive Stone Age cultures, yet they seem to figure out the sun thing. I actually don't think we can see that as that primitive. Mean that they're farmers, of course they're going to be understanding when summer is, when winter is. They relying on it in terms of their farming cycle, and actually the ability to measure that and to be able to see when you know different times a year that's quite useful too. Big clock, yeah, a really big clock, and maybe the world's most famous one. It draws millions of visitors, including President Obama when he dropped by last year. It's the size of the stones that impresses that, and the fact that the big upright ones were somehow to this place for more than 30 miles away, and some of the smaller ones brought from much further, and all of that before the builders had use of the wheel. Stonehenge archaeologist and historian Susan Greene spends a lot of time answering the one question that always comes up: how did they do it? Some one of those things where people say, well, prehistoric people were kind of unsophisticated and there was cavemen. No, they were building Stonehenge. If they were building Stonehenge, they were very sophisticated people. Stonehenge is unique, there's nothing like it in the entire world. There's no other lintel stone circle. When I say lintel, what I mean the horizontal stones on the top of the other stones. So it tells us huge amount about the sophistication of our prehistoric ancestors, whatever its technical wonder. Stonehenge is also a spiritual place. Some of the findings suggest ancient rituals, including possibly human sacrifice, may have been carried out here. Legends persist that the place was a ceremonial ground for druids, despite the fact there's no evidence the mystical cult that existed about 2,000 years ago was ever here. That hasn't stopped modern-day devotees from coming back. Although the modern surveyors have discovered evidence of other activity, there's also, if you imagine in this landscape, there are festivals here in the 80s. So what we've also picked up as a lot area, little semi-combustive little pieces from the latrine. In this area what they haven't found, though, is meaning no machine can do that, there's elements do, is solar lunar alignments marking time. It's almost certainly a temple, but it also has all these other sort of functions. So when we start sort of saying what's the meaning Stonehenge, I think probably how many reasons do you mean? The technical survey has increased the appetite for more traditional archaeological study. Until you dig you don't really know what's there, and now they have so many more places to dig.